All right, so John went to see if he can grab others who may have not have gotten the memo. But we'll get started. So we have today, let's pray, and then we'll introduce Holly, and then we'll turn it over. Father, thank you for allowing us to be here today and for closing out this semester. That you strengthen each one here as they complete their assigned tasks for the semester. Thank you for this chance to reflect on the power of the organ and its abilities for supporting singing and corporate worship, and thank you for talented organists who have given themselves to this ministry. Thank you for Holly. Pray that what we learned from her today would be possible for us all. Pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so we're privileged to have our PhD student Holly Farrow here today to present on the organ. So I'm sure she'll give us a little bit of background, where you play and that kind of thing.
Sure.
To help us out there. So I think this may be the first organ colloquium presentation.
Oh, wow! I'm honored.
Dr. Lim presented her dissertation research several years ago, but didn't actually model anything.
Oh.
Okay. Let's welcome Holly.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much. This is a delight to be here. Did everyone ever got a copy of the handout? Okay. Great. Well, I've been an organist, a church organist I played in the church for about 30 years. I started out when I was about in my mid-teen years. I've played in a lot of different denominations, Methodist Church, Episcopal Church, Presbyterian Church. Currently, I play in the Methodist Church in Champaign, Illinois, where my husband and I live. And so I've been a kind of a potpourri of religious experiences, liturgical experience. And so this is a delight to be here on campus to actually play. I was just commenting, it's been about 8 or 9 years since I've actually played on this style organ. It's had a couple of hours on it earlier today, and so it was really great to get back into it. So we're going to talk about, actually it's two parts to the presentation today. We're going to talk a little bit about the organ itself, the structure of it, talk a little bit about it, and if there's anything that jumps out at you, interesting, you want to just interact and ask a question or anything at all, please feel free to jump in with anything. It doesn't have to be formal. We can interact, and if you want to come up around and take a look, or anything at all, any requests that you may have, we'll just go with it together. So we'll talk a little bit, about the organ first. A couple of fun quotes about the organ. J.S. Bach said, "There's really nothing remarkable about it. All one has to do is hit the right keys at the right time, and the instrument plays itself." Well, for someone as eternally brilliant as he, it's for some of us, it's a little more complicated than that. But my favorite quote of a famous composer about the organ comes from Robert Schumann, who says, "Lose no opportunity of practicing on the organ. There is no other instrument which takes a swifter revenge on anything unclear or sloppy in composition or playing." So, important safety tip there for everyone, for all organists. I was just in prepping for this presentation today. I was reading through Artistic Theologian, and I know that about 5 years ago there was an article there about the decline of the organ. And at one time, this is maybe 10 years ago, the American Guild of Organists said that in the entire United States, there was only about 500 organ majors, which is really, and probably that number has gone down a lot. I'm kind of a little bit of an endangered species, I'm sorry to say. People are just not going into it. And sadly, even the organs themselves are disappearing from churches. So, in fact, in my hometown, Jackson, Tennessee, is where I'm originally from, there was a church that had a wonderful mechanical action, beautiful organ in the church. Got a new pastor, decided he wanted to take the church in a whole new direction, and actually dismantled the organ, this beautiful, magnificent, to actually take the money to, remove an organ. It's one thing to not use it, but to actually remove it where you no longer have the opportunity to use it is sad, and that always saddens me to hear about that. So but the American Guild of Organists, we're trying to turn the tide around a little bit about the organ with high school students. Pipe organ encounters where you try to, or people that may play piano but have not played the organ so much. And so you try to bring them in and have pizza and do organ crawls up in the organ chamber and see all the neat stuff. But it's still, you soon find out that it's a big commitment of time, effort to properly study the organ. So It's a little bit in decline, but I still have hope. I'm going to keep plugging away as we go along. So I brought today this demo of the types of organ pipes. And basically, there are two different kinds of organ pipes. There are flue, F-L-U-E, and reed pipes. And these here, they all look different, but these are flue pipes where you have just a column of air going through the pipe. And then this is a reed pipe. And this is a lot different because inside this mechanism here, here we have the resonator and the mouth. And this is the tuning. This is how you would tune. These type of pipes are very susceptible to dust, humidity, temperature changes. But inside this mechanism here, there is a little reed that beats back and forth, vibrates, like a reed on a reed instrument. And what's interesting is if you have a trumpet stop on the organ, it's really called a reed stop on the, so even though it's a brass instrument in the orchestra, it's actually produced by a reed on the organ. So this is a reed pipe. And then here you have, this is a principal pipe. And this, usually when they're speckled like this, you can see the metals that are used. This is about 50% zinc, 50% lead. You're welcome to take a look at these. Just remember they do have lead, so don't handle it and then eat a bag of chips or something. So they're a little poisonous there. But the structure of the pipe, the organ is a very personified instrument. Where we have the toe, this is called the toe of the pipe. Here is the foot, have the mouth of the pipe here, have ears. Here this helps with the stability of sound, also with tuning. And of course the organ pipes have air. So it's almost, the organ is very personified. The organ has bellows like lungs, and so it's a very personified instrument. And here we have, this is a flute pipe. Most of the flute pipes that you see, I can demonstrate these in just a minute on the organ, and they're stopped here on the top. This is how you would tune the instrument, and you tried it. These are the principles are the most. Those are the pipes that is the basic organ sound. This is the type of sound that is not trying to imitate anything in the orchestra. So we have flutes imitating flutes, reeds, and then this is a string pipe that tries to imitate the sound of the strings. So these are the four different types within the two larger type of organ pipes. And so the pipes, like I said, very temperamental. They can get out of tune. It's a big investment of time and money for a church to maintain a pipe organ. So it has to be a big commitment on everyone's part. Ideally, you would hold it at a normal temperature all year around to keep it stable. And each pipe is its own source of sound. Each of the pipes speak. So, and it's a little bit different when you have a pipe organ as with a digital. And one time I asked an actual organ builder, what do you really feel about digital organs? He said, well, if you really wanted to get close to the view of a real pipe, each little note, each little pipe sound would have to have its own little tiny speaker. But the technology of the digital has really come a long way in recent years. And so a couple of my churches have had digital organs, and I enjoy it. And you get a lot more out of your music budget. You can get a lot more organ for a lot less money with the digital. So it's a good thing. I love both. It's always a good thing to have. As I was talking about some of the structures of the pipe, so a lot of these metal pipes, you use a lot of zinc, lead, tin, and nickel, and in different percentages. It kind of determines what sort of sound you're going to end up getting with that. There are two different kinds of organ actions. You hear about a tracker action and electropneumatic action. And with a tracker action, you have a series of wooden levers and rods that are, when you actually press a key down, you're actually exerting the energy needed to open the valve to let air go through the pipe. And so back when I was playing tracker actions and practicing them 4 to 6 hours a day, you get really strong in your hands. And so, because when you couple down other sounds from other manuals, it becomes twice as hard to play, and then 3 times as hard to play as you go along. So, and then electropneumatic actions, where electricity does all the work for you. Most organs are electropneumatic action. We have the different divisions. We have Here we have the main, we have the grate, the swell. The swell division is usually used for accompanying and different colors that you can bring down. And then we have the choir. And this is, I've never seen this before. This division up here has solo stops that you can play up here. This is the largest digital organ, so I was having fun experimenting around with that earlier today. As far as stop combinations, and I'll play some samples in just a minute of so you can hear some of the different sounds. How do you register things on the organ? Are there some basic things that you need to know? There are some general standard stop combinations every organist should know. Some genres of music have a lot more standard prescribed things. I know the French Baroque, they like a lot of, they're very specific about what they ask for on their registrations. I'll give an example of that too. But there's a lot of room for creativity on the organ. A lot of it is an art to registration. You get to know your instrument, what you particularly have. You get to know what you bond with it. And then you get to just sort of do your own thing as far as registration. I'll go ahead and play a couple of different samples of some of the different sounds. Some of the basics, the principal sounds. Here we have, I've got some basic things set up here, so I'll give a sample of, let's see, this here. Principal, well, just a second here. Yeah, and so this is like a basic string sound, and then as you add different stops, you add, like if you add the 4-foot, and then you can hear the other sounds coming on. You also have, I was going to play a sample of a piece. This is a French Baroque piece that features the tierce sound. And I'll go ahead and let me pull this up here just for a moment here. Get the stops pulled out here. And what's interesting about the tierce, this is what's called a mutation stop. And it basically, it has, whenever you play a note on this particular stop, you hear an overtone. You actually hear a 12th above what the note says. So you can actually hear it as you, and then as you go up the scale, it turns into a really nice solo stop. So I'll give you an example of that. So you can hear, so when I'm playing, you're hearing overtones, but as you go up the scale, then it combines into a nice solo sound and color. So I'll play a sample of a piece that uses this. This is a French Baroque piece by Jean-Adam Guillain, Tierce Entaillé, which means, again, French Baroque, very specific, the tierce stop in the tenor. So you'll hear that come into play as we go along. I'll give you a brief sample of this piece. And let me pull up what I've got here. Put the pedals here. Let's get set here. I don't have presets here, so it takes me just a moment just to set it up here. All right. you can sort of kind of get a sense for the color that's available on these different types of stops, and there are a lot to choose from on this digital sampling here. So then we have I've got this another piece that I was going to play you a sample of too, another solo stop. This is a piece written by Dr. Albert Travis, and so when I was an undergraduate at Union University over 20 years ago, Dr. Travis came to our campus and did a concert and just completely just inspired me, blew me away with his improvisations. And so I thought I've got to at least play an excerpt of his piece when I'm on this wonderful campus. So this is his arrangement of Let All Mortal Flesh Keep Silence, just to kind of give an idea of the solo sounds that are available on the organ. It'll take me just a moment to get that set up as well. So let me get these pulled here. Okay, get that, and we'll add this. Okay, here we go. These are some of those string stops that I mentioned earlier. Give a little bit of a sample of that. See what else I was going to talk about. Now, the next thing I was going to talk about, if you look at your handout, the hymn presentation I was going to do. Just want to talk a little bit about, one of my passions as a church organist is our hymn texts and how we can enhance congregational singing. Because, our congregation is the largest choir in the church, but they don't get the benefit of a rehearsal. So I try to do, as an organist, they're coming in and, then maybe they're just getting there, they get the kids up and eat, and they get there, and so what can I do as an organist to help usher us into a sense of worship, usher us into the presence of God? So everything I want to do to set the stage for that, to the proper conditions for worship. So, for those of us who are not in the pulpit, who don't have the means to communicate these ideas to the congregation, how can we inspire the church to think about the words that we sing together? Now, if you're a choir director, praise team leader, you can spend time focusing on the text of what you sing. But what I'm going to do now is walk us through a hymn presentation that I've done in some small groups in churches. I've done it for Sunday school classes, women's circles, any type of small group. And what's really great is after you spend some time with your congregation in small groups talking about hymn texts, you see the light bulb go on. That they'll say, "Oh, I've never thought about hymns this way before." So it's really a good thing to do to sort of enhance, and anything that we can get people thinking about the words we sing. It's so easy, and it happens to me too. As an organist, you'll be playing along on the verse, and all of a sudden you'll say, "Oh, what verse are we on?" But the more we can think about the text of what we're singing, and a lot of times I'll base what I do on the organ through reading the text. I always try to read the text of the hymns every Sunday, so I know how to register them. What are we trying to do? What are we trying to communicate? And what's good is we don't have to wait till we're invited to go and speak to some of these Sunday school classes. Try to make the rounds, and we can talk to them. about that. Because the hymnal is a wonderful devotional book, and I always, try to encourage congregants, get to know your hymnal and make it to be a good tool for devotion. So just out for fun, I thought we could read through Wesley's directions for singing. We don't have to necessarily read every single word for word, but these are a hoot, and everyone really loves them. The directions for singing from 1761, his select hymns. So this is on the first page of your handout. Learn these tunes before you learn any others. Afterwards, you can learn as many as you please. So after you learn all 700, you can learn some others there. Number 2, sing them exactly as they are printed here, without altering or mending them at all. And if you have learned to sing them otherwise, unlearn it as soon as you can. Then we have number 3, sing all. See that you join with the congregation as frequently as you can. Let not a slight degree of weakness or weariness hinder you. If it is a cross to you, take it up, and you will find it a blessing. And I love this one. I think number 4 is sing lustily and with a good courage. Beware of singing as if you were half dead or half asleep. But lift up your voice with strength. Be no more afraid of your voice now, nor more ashamed of its being heard than when you sung the songs of Satan. I can't argue with that logic. Number 5, sing modestly. Do not bawl, as is to be heard above, distinct from the rest of the congregation. Number 6, sing in time. Whatever time is sung. Now this is a really good one. Whatever time is sung, be sure to keep with it. Do not run before or stay behind. And so, that's one thing I always try to remember as an organist too. I play an introduction, and almost invariably there'll be a little bit of a slowdown from the tempo that I set. But that's always such an exciting moment in worship. I play the introduction, and then I can hear the congregation take a breath. There's that little moment of anticipation. And if I hear them take a big breath, I think, okay, the singing's going to be pretty good today. If not so much, maybe not quite as good. But that's always a wonderful moment as an organist, when you can hear the congregation take that breath to come in and sing. And then number 7, above all, sing spiritually. Have an eye to God in every word you sing. Aim at pleasing Him more than yourself or any other creature. In order to do this, attend strictly to the sense of what you sing, and see that your heart is not carried away with the sound, but offered to God continually. So shall your singing be, such as the Lord will approve here, and reward you when He cometh in the clouds of heaven. So, like I said, when I go to the small groups, Sunday school classes, they love hearing these historical things and bring it in. And so this is what I thought I would walk us through, is a basic hymn presentation that I've done before. I usually like to start with a Bible verse, and I've got it there on the next page, 2 Chronicles 20. And when Jehoshaphat, had taken counsel with the people, he appointed those who were to sing to the Lord and praise Him in holy attire, some versions say holy splendor, as they went before the army, and say, give thanks to the Lord, for His steadfast love endures forever. And when they had begun to sing and praise, that's when God acts. That's when He acts. That's when, in this verse, that God routed the enemies of Judah, and they were successful. So I always like to point out that how important congregational singing is. I mean, here in the Old Testament, the singers go out before the army. How important praise is. And we think about the church now. So many things that we're fighting against and fighting for, that singing is so important. And I always like to highlight that for congregations, just to remind them that it's not just something we do, because tradition, yes, very important, but there are very important reasons why we do what we do in singing, and to wake up and really sing with gusto, sing with a lot of enthusiasm, because the word enthusiasm comes from the Greek entheos, which means in God. So I always try to say, let's remember to be in God, be enthusiastic in our singing. And so what I thought we would do is just kind of go through, there are different types of hymn texts, and I like to emphasize this to the groups. Some hymn texts communicate, address God directly. Others where we're addressing each other. There are different types. So once I bring that to people's attentions, I think it makes a lasting impression on them. So what I thought we'd do first, you have there Ann Steele, who I wrote a paper on this semester, particular Baptist hymn writer from the 18th century. And her hymns were very popular up into through the 19th century. They don't get sung a whole lot now, but I thought we're going to change that. Let's sing whenever we can actually sing just maybe 2 verses. Let's just maybe sing verses 1 and 8, those first and last verses there. And we'll sing it to the tune of St. Columba, the King of Love, my shepherd is. So I thought we'll go through that. So if I know some of us may have colds, you may not feel like singing, but those of us who do, who want to sing through, maybe just those two stanzas there. And I will add the swell and the great to pedal. Stanza 1. Last verse. Wonderful singing. Thank you so much. Great. Okay, well, let's just walk through some of these. And basically, I chose these based on the type of text that they are. So we have what I like to call a prayer hymn. So these are hymns that address God directly. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah. And again, and these are, as an organist, I want to do anything I can to enhance the singing of these hymns. I'll always read them, register the hymns based on the text. If it's a more somber verse, might bring softer stops into play for that. Sometimes I'll have the organ drop out and have an a cappella verse. And so make sure your choir is ready for that. But that's a very effective way to highlight a verse, is if just, organ just disappears. And then the church where I play in Champaign, they're used to that now, and so you can feel them, pick it up and take it along. And so that's another effective thing to do, a way to enhance and bring excitement back into hymn singing. And I also love to use interludes, reharmonizations, and big modulation. I'll show you an example of that as we finish up to make it more exciting. So with text analysis, of course, everything we do in worship is presented to God. Whether the text is where we're trying to build up our own faith to praise, or if we're talking to God directly, whatever the text is saying, we're presenting all of these things to God. But it can be really enriching if we sort of really analyze what specifically are these hymns talking about. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, and holy, holy, holy. These are what I like to call prayer hymns, or hymns that address God directly. So let's just kind of walk through the text just ever so briefly. I'll try to make sure we're doing okay on time. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. Bread of heaven, feed me now and evermore. Feed me and now and evermore. And so this is a prayer. And so we're actually we're addressing God through this hymn. So when I with a group, when I walk through this and point this out, you can just, again, you see the realization, because it's so easy to be on autopilot sometimes. It happens to all of us during worship. But if you really, and a lot of this comes from my own personal testimony. When I first went to graduate school at Florida State, somehow this came to me, had this realization of when you're really singing these words and really connecting with God in the heart. It completely transformed my spiritual life and as a church musician as well. So now that we're sort of aware of that, let's maybe go through 2 verses of this, Guide Me, maybe 1 and 3. And let's see what we've got here for stops. All right. Now that we've kind of been made aware of what the text is about, let's sing it and see how it enhances our experiences of it. There we go. All right, wonderful. Well, maybe let's do Holy, Holy, maybe like just 2 verses of that too. You sound so good. I'm just so excited. I want to just keep going. Let me see if I could adjust my stops here. I'm trying to use some of the presets that are already here. All right, a little bit here. There we go. All right, let's do, maybe I'll do a reharmonization on, let's do 1 and 4. I'll do a reharmonization on that, and then we'll look at some other different types here. That's wonderful. Great. Let's see. Then I wanted to talk about a different type of hymn. I think. Let's see if thou but trust in God. So this is a hymn that's kind of what I like to call a hymn of instruction. This is kind of gives advice for the faithful. So why don't we maybe sing a verse of that? If thou but trust in God. And this hymn, it talks about, so even though it doesn't necessarily address God directly, it's just saying if we do these things, we're kind of, trying to encourage one another in the faith. Here are the things we need to do. So it's a different type of text. Well, let's go through that. Find a good set. Okay. Let's just do verse 1. Here we go. Yes, very nice. Then, they always love this one. Hymn texts that are told from God's perspective, God speaking to his people. So we have, how firm a foundation, you saints of the Lord. And so once we get past verse 1, all of a sudden, in this text, we have God speaking. I think we skip over, yeah. Yeah, do you all have that, how firm a foundation in your head? Okay, good. How firm a foundation. So all of a sudden we have God speaking in this hymn. So that's always exciting too. So maybe let's, I don't know why I don't have this one, this particular one in my stack here. Oh, here it is. Okay, so let's maybe do verse 1 and 2 so we can get the full effect of the text there. All right, so let me. All right, let's see. Let's pull back a little bit on the pedal. All right. All right, so how firm a foundation? Let's do verses 1 and 2. Wonderful. Okay, great. And I thought we would end off with hymns that admonish God's people to praise. And so we've got All Hail the Power of Jesus' Name. And what I thought we would do, we'll sing verse 1, then I'll have an interlude and a modulation, and then we'll end off just to show. And I have my live trumpet stop with my husband. David's going to play on this one. This is what we like to do in church, just to kind of anything to bring excitement to the hymns. And so, and again, it's a wonderful. It's one of those wonderful texts that just really inspire praise, and having another instrument along with that. And so, I always like to incorporate as many people from the congregation to use their gifts as possible. Of course, you have to work with them. You have to, you can't just say, "Oh, you play, come next Sunday." You need to work with them. You don't need to, you need to actually rehearse and work with them. But that's been a very enriching part of my ministry, is trying to bring people that maybe not necessarily forthcoming that they play, but I love it when we can all bring our gifts to God. And so, David is certainly very faithful in doing that. And so, we'll sing 2 verses again. Maybe maybe first and last, I think. And I'm going to do an interlude, yes. Let me find my... All right. Oh, I must have got my music here. Here it is. Okay, got it. All right. So this is kind of a sample. If you came to Faith Methodist Church some Sunday, this is what you might get for an opening or closing hymn. Let's see. Do general 4, add some mixtures. Okay. Again, just trying to get used to this very large selection of stops here. All right. So here we go. We'll do one, the first and last, and then I'll have an interlude modulation in between. Wow, wonderful. Woo. I feel like we're almost like having a church service. That's great. So this was basically just a very brief walkthrough of some hymn presentations. I love to be able to work with my congregation and inspire them to think about the hymns, to think about the text of what we sing, and do anything we can to add to the excitement and enjoyment. Are there any questions or any requests, anything that you would like to ask about the organ at all? I'll be glad to give it my best shot to answer.
Can we end with a Vidor Toccata?
Oh my! I have.
I haven't heard that in about a year.
Oh my! Well, I do play that piece. It's been a while, but I think I may have. I think I have may have my Bach toccata D minor maybe. I have that, but that's one I have not played in a while. But that would be a good one.
I served at a Methodist church, so I'm used to it. I mean, I play it every other, not every, at least a year.
Uh-huh.
Our congregation plays it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's pretty tough too. And Vidor had gigantic hands, so he could do all the had all that. Yeah, yeah. I think he did. I think he had to have. Yeah. Right. Do you all have? I'm just curious about what you all have at your churches. You have, organs. You have organ and piano. Do you have orchestra? What's the situation at your churches that you all have? Organ and piano. Yeah. Electronic keyboard. Yeah. Electric keyboard. Yeah. Well, I've also played in a praise band too. So, orchestra with organ. Oh, neat. That's great. Oh my goodness. Wow. That's awesome. Wow. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Good. That is a great question. I think and as I've gone through different denominations, I don't seem to think we get to that point. There's so often the singing in some churches. We read about sounding half dead. Singing is just really bad sometimes, and so I don't know if I ever get to the point of, oh, this is too much. But you're right, though, is you don't want it to come where it becomes flashy or it becomes like this big I would say I like to do very very tasteful things that with the organ, and and I might not, like what we just did on that last verse, I wouldn't do that on every hymn. I might have if you do something big on one hymn, let that be it. And maybe keep the other hymns simple, and maybe just drop out and sing parts, or just kind of let the hymns speak for themselves. So I don't think I would want to go overboard in dressing up every single thing, because then it can start to bump up against being, you don't want it to be a show. It's all just to enhance the sense of worship. But that's a great question. That's something to definitely keep in mind. I'm always, and I probably don't think about that as often as I should, because I'm always trying to get the congregation to sing more. And really, only one of our services is there any congregational singing at all. A lot of the others, they don't sing. Some don't open hymnal. They don't. Yes, they do. They sure do. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's where our big choir is too. And so they're a big boost to the group as well. You can't overstate the importance of a good choir helping with a congregational sing. And sometimes on those Sundays when they're actually out in the room, if we're not singing a choir anthem and they're out in I noticed that day, the congregational singing is a lot better because they're kind of distributed, have some strong singers out in the group. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is a great question too. That can be done. There are some things on the web that you can get that you can sort of try to adapt some of the stuff for the organ. Some of it, you can do it. I mean, when I play in the praise band, I am always on a piano or a keyboard. But a lot of it would have to just be with chording things. Maybe have a solo out the melody on another manual. But there are ways to adapt it. But yeah, it can be difficult to do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. It can be done. I've heard it done. Yeah. That's a great question too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Sometimes I do. Yeah, a lot of it depends on the text. And sometimes I'll surprise the congregation. So a lot of times if the text that's coming up, like maybe it's verse 3 out of a 5-verse hymn that's a little more somber, and what I usually do is I'll start them, I'll come in on that verse, and then quietly just drop out. I think, yeah, because if it becomes too formulaic, then it can lose its effectiveness. But it does work well to drop out the last one before, because then when the organ comes back in, there's that moment of real excitement, and it kind of invigorates. I guess invigorates is probably a better word. Invigorates the singing. So yeah, I don't have a set rule. A lot of it depends on the text. But yeah, it's different times. Usually I do it too after the choir has had a chance to sing some of the parts. Like if they may sing on, I'll say verse 2, sing parts, and then they'll have rehearsed through singing the parts. then they'll be ready to drop for me to drop out on verse 3 or something. So it just kind of varies on the situation. That's a great question too. On the organ playing, I do. I'm not the director. There's two other staff musicians that they kind of pick the hymns. So one of the few pieces of freedom that I do have is how am I going to treat the hymn. So I think that's why I have a lot more opportunity to think about it, because that's really one of the few places where I get to offer something of my own thought. And so yeah, I do have that freedom. At least I have it so far. No one has stopped me. You never know. When I said, don't do that anymore. So far, so good. Yes, if you want to modulate, and then I'll ask David to play, like on the last verse, just to kind of just give that boost. So far, I've been able to just kind of mastermind the hymns, hopefully with God's inspiration, not mine. I want it to be from Him, of course. But yeah, so far. I do, yeah. I do, right before... Whoa. Actually, that's you're right. Yeah, that's true. You don't want to have the surprises in that way. Good to surprise the congregation, not so much the minister of music. But I'll walk over, and sometimes, I'll say, oh, by the way, between 4 and 5, I'm going to modulate. And if I'm going to reharmonize, I always make sure to tell them, because if the choir's singing parts and I'm doing a reharmonization, big clash. You've got to have unison on a reharmonization. So yeah, communicating that's very important. Absolutely. Oh, thank you. You all are great. Thank you so much for singing so beautifully and for listening and letting me talk on and on about the organ. Thank you.
All right, so that